Welcome to another episode of the Looking After Nature podcast, where we hope to bring you close to nature and wildlife in Hampshire. My name is Andy Davison. I'm here once again with my co-host, Carly Harrod. Hi, Carly.
Hi, Andy. We're down at Lepe Country Park today, but we're not here for the beach or the wonderful views.
No, we're here today to visit the Wildlife and Sensory Garden and talk to Janet, who's a ranger down here at Lepe, who will be telling us about the garden and wildlife we can find here.
And there certainly is a lot of wildlife around. We're sat at the end of the garden by the pollinator patch, and I can see butterflies, bees, and I can hear so many birds. And I know that we get some more of our secret wildlife here too.
Yes, I'm really keen to start looking at this place, so let's get on with it. Hi, Janet.
Hi, Andy.
So we're here to talk about wildlife gardening and the sensory garden. So we'll have a wander around, but there's plenty to see in this garden, isn't there?
Yeah, there's loads.
So you've also said that was a sensory garden. So what is a sensory garden?
So a sensory garden is just a place where you can experience using all your senses. So for example, you'll have things that you can touch, things that are spiky, things that are maybe soft, but then also herbs that you can smell, taste, and then also just to sit here and listen. You can hear the bird song, you can hear bugs buzzing around. So it uses all five senses.
So how is it used by your visitors?
So it's used by all of our visitors really. We get a lot of families coming to use it because it's quite good for children. It's quite good for them just to touch and be in a safe space. But also it's very nice for, say, for adults just to walk around and enjoy the scenery.
And there's a lot of health and well-being benefits of visiting something like this, isn't there?
Of course, yeah. I mean, just being out in nature is just great for health and well-being. Just being out and being quiet and, as I say, listening to the bird song, listening to what's around you, just being in the moment is really, really good for your health and your mental health.
And that's good for anybody, but there are other particular groups who come here because of the setup you've got here?
Yeah, so we do have a men's group from Solent Mind that come, and they work on the veg patch. We also currently have Oak Lodge School, who are a special needs school just up the road, and they're using a corner of the sensory garden to develop their horticultural skills.
Okay, so what can we see right in front of us now? I can see we talked about herbs. I think I saw some rosemary just over there. Of course, that's used for cooking as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so here we've got rosemary, we've got oregano, we've got thyme here, but it's also good for any bugs or any bees that are visiting, because they're really, really good pollinating plants actually as well. Yeah,
we can see a few bits. It's a bit cooler today, so it's not absolutely buzzing with insects, but there's a few here.
Unfortunately not, no.
Yeah. But your rosemary, it has flowers a bit like your sage flowers and stuff like that, with deep flowers. We've talked before about deep flowers that the long tongue things go into.
Yeah.
But there's also, I can see quite a lot of flies on this plant here.
Yeah, so we've got some yarrow here, and I think that's actually been our most popular plant over the last month or so. I've seen things like soldier beetles, longhorn beetles, all types of bees. It's been really, really great for all of them.
And that's a plant that's got what we might think of as shallow flower. So all the pollen and nectar is quite close to the top of the flower. It's a big open top flower. So that's why flies in particular like it, because bees and some of the moths have got really long tongues, but they've got quite short ones, so they can use that one very effectively.
It's almost like a landing pad.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what it is, because the plants want them to come in and pick up some of the pollen and move it to the next plant and pollinate that. So it is absolutely a landing pad. So what's the spiky thing over there?
So that's sea holly. That's another one that's really come into its own in the last 3 weeks or so. I've seen all kinds of bumblebees on there. We've even had green-eyed flower bees on there, which has been really great to see. So it's really, really popular, but it's also quite spiky. So again, we're going back to that sensory element where plants can be all kinds of different things. They can be soft, they can be spiky, and that's definitely a spiky one.
And the green-eyed flower bee, that's a solitary bee, not like the social bumblebees, isn't it?
I think so. I'm not too sure. All I know is that it's got wonderful green eyes and it makes a very, very high-pitched buzz. So they're very distinctive.
Yeah, I mean, you've got at Lepe. We're a little bit back from the coast here, but you've got what we call soft rock cliffs, which are like sand and gravels in the cliffs. So those solitary bees, those in particular, like nesting in holes in the ground.
Yeah. So
you've got this lovely sunny south-facing soft rock cliff for nesting, and they can fly across to here and pick up the pollen and nectar. And you say that high-pitched sound, they buzzing, because they hover quite effectively, don't they?
Yeah.
some people call them motorbike bees. They sound like, you know those little 250 motorbikes you get when you first start riding them. Not that I ever rode a motorbike, but when you first start riding a motorbike, that high pitch, that sort of noise, don't they?
Exactly that, yeah.
So what's that tall yellow flowered plant there?
So that's Helianthus. It's a bit like, it's a member of the sunflower family. So again, that's got a really good flower that's a bit like a landing pad. So again, for those short-tongued bees.
So it's a bit like a big yellow daisy we're sitting here, isn't it? Yeah. And I can see some plants which aren't flowering now, actually. There's this plant here with the blotchy leaves. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, so that's lungwort. That's really, really good for flowering in, I'd say probably March, April time. So really good for an early flower. So it was very popular at the start of the year, as was this bugle carpet weed over here that flowered at the same time. And they both have quite closed cup type flowers.
Yeah.
So again, it's for your long-tongued bees.
And then I think that's a sedum, is it there?
Yes, yeah. So that's a sedum. Not sure which kind, but yeah, definitely a sedum.
So that's not actually flowering yet?
No, that will be flowering, I think, end of August, come September, I'd say.
And that's the thing with gardens, is that because people want to see flowers throughout the year, it means what you've got in there is a pollen source throughout the year. So as you say, the lungwort flowers really early in the year.
Yeah.
So when the bumblebees first come out, there's a nectar source and pollen source for them. And then as they go through the year, you've got some plants that have gone over. You've got some plants in full flower, like the yarrow. And then, as you say, the sedum will come in later. So some species need a huge range of things throughout the year. So if you just have one flower in the middle of the year and nothing else, then things like bumblebees wouldn't thrive here, because they need that continuous throughout the year, don't they?
Yeah, and it's also just the different kinds of bees and the different types of beetles that can also pollinate. You're offering something for everyone, the butterflies that visit even as well. So it's really, really beneficial to have something that's always here all year round. It's the same with the ragged robin here. It started flowering quite early on, but as you can see, it's still flowering now. So it's been quite a good pollen source.
And it's quite often, because I mean, this is a pollinator patch, there's quite a lot of plants that are close to the wild forms of them, aren't they? They're not really heavily adapted like some plants can be in the garden, which means they're pretty good as well. I mean, some of the highly cultivated roses, some of the traditional roses people think about, there's so many petals and they're so tight, the flower, they can't actually get in there to get the pollen, can they?
Yeah, I've read that it's actually quite hard, so it's better to have an array as well, because it's nice having flowers and having roses, and why not have that special rose that you like, but then also maybe plant something else next to it that can be pollinated.
Absolutely. I can actually see a butterfly on there. It's nice, there's a bit of wildness in it. You've got brambles in here as well, which clearly you haven't planted. And they're great plants, as long as they don't take over. I mean, things like your nettles, your brambles, a bit of those in your garden's fine, isn't it? But if they start taking over, they become a bit of a problem. Because nettles in particular are great for a lot of butterflies and moths. Things like peacock butterflies and small tortoiseshell butterflies. They lay their eggs on there, don't they? And brambles are very good because they've got a lovely flower that a lot of butterflies use. It's just starting to go towards the fruit now, isn't it?
Yes, it is. We've got some at the front that are a little bit more in the sun, which are definitely, they're kind of half fruiting even. I think I've even seen people pick them. So they're ready.
So they're a really good flower. It's like the flower's like a very simple rose flower, isn't it?
Yes.
And they're a really good flower for pollinating insects, bees and butterflies and moths. But the fruit is very important for a lot of wild birds. Things like blackcaps and garden warblers and blackbirds. You get them eating a huge amount of that fruit when they come in a bit later in the season. And for some, that's really quite key, because they're using that energy to go and migrate, particularly things like blackbirds.
Yeah.
I can see a wasp. Now, people don't like wasps normally.
Oh yeah.
It's a little tiny black and yellow thing.
Oh yeah.
But that's a solitary wasp.
It's got really yellow legs.
Yeah, so it's a bit smaller than what most people think of wasps. They think of the social wasp, jaspers or those sort of things, which come and eat your jam and really annoy you when you're having a barbecue. But these ones, that's a solitary wasp, and I think that's one of the group that burrows into wood and uses beetle burrows. And these tend to eat a lot of garden pests.
Okay.
So it might be caterpillars.
So it's good for the garden.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. There's a little tiny, there's a group of little tiny black ones which go in things like, you know, tiny little holes like woodworm holes, and they eat a huge amount of aphids.
Ah,
So you
right.
green flies.
Oh, that is good.
So these ones, depending on the species, it could be flies or it could be bugs, as in shield bugs, larvae.
Oh, okay.
So the wasps get a bad time sometimes.
Yeah,
don't
they do. They do.
Yeah.
They definitely do.
But even your social wasps, they eat a huge amount of garden pests. So they're very good in your garden as long as you're comfortable with them in there. Because we saw some deadwood out. We'll be looking at the stumpery in a minute, I think. But hopefully we'll see some beetle burrows and things like that.
Yeah.
So this looks a bit more veg patch in some ways, doesn't it? What have you got in here?
Yeah, so over here we have quite a few tomato plants that are currently coming up. We've got a few courgette plants. We're currently trying to have a pumpkin competition, but unfortunately the deer do keep coming through and nibbling at them. So we're not sure who's going to win that one. And we have got French beans, but then we've got a lot of nasturtiums around as well, because they act as a sort of sacrificial plant.
So what do you mean by sacrificial plant?
So nasturtiums are really good to plant next to something that you're planting that you're obviously wanting to eat. So say French beans, tomatoes, that kind of thing, because then the nasturtiums, what they act as a kind of food source for the caterpillars.
Yeah.
So rather than the caterpillars coming along and eating all your yummy beans, they'll actually eat the nasturtium leaves and live on those as caterpillars. Because as you can see now, there are a lot of caterpillars on that leaf here.
Yeah, there's about 20 little caterpillars there, and it looks like they've made a lace of that nasturtium leaf, haven't they?
Yeah. So I'd rather them make a lace of that rather than say tomatoes or your beans.
But I mean, that's probably, it's a bit difficult to say at that size. That looks a bit like a cabbage vine, so they're more likely to go on your cabbage plants and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
There's some lovely beans up there, isn't there? Do you actually eat these? Do the group, does the friends group or anything eat those?
So I think it'll probably go along to staff
Yeah.
first, or maybe the groups that actually do use the garden to plant at the moment. It depends who gets there first, I think.
And you've actually got a tomato plant here?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a couple here, aren't there?
Yeah, we have got different kinds. I'm not too sure what exactly they are, but you can see here they're slightly different shape and a bit more longer shape than your traditional rounder ones that like here. And we've also got, are these Cosmos, sorry. So Cosmos, and again they act not so much as a sacrificial plant, but they're really, really good pollinators. So the bees will pollinate these as well as pollinating the tomato plants that are nearby.
Because in a previous episode we talked about different types of pollination. Because we talked about tomato plants. And there, you can see it's like a cone shape there.
Oh yeah.
And they need something called buzz pollination, which means that the insect will come along. Quite often it's a bumblebee. Bumblebees are fantastic at this.
Oh, okay.
They'll grab hold of that cone and they'll buzz their wing muscles. And that releases the cloud of pollen.
Oh wow.
So the pollen won't be released unless it's buzz pollinated.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, but honeybees don't do buzz pollination.
Okay.
So if you want pollination of your tomato plants, you need bumblebees and things that buzz pollinate.
Okay.
And it looks quite successful because you've got quite a lot of tomatoes here, haven't you?
Yeah, at the moment, yeah.
So it's possible to grow, I mean, I know you're on the coast here and it's quite mild.
Yeah.
But it is possible to grow tomato plants outside. You don't always need a
definitely.
greenhouse.
Yeah, definitely. I've even got some at home actually that are just sitting in, it's quite a shallow pot and I didn't think they'd work. But there's at least about 3 tomatoes growing on there. So you can start somewhere.
Well, there's nothing like the taste of homegrown tomatoes, is there? Because they're not like, I mean, if you buy them, they're picked at a certain point, so they'll be hopefully ripe by the time you get to eat them.
Yeah.
But you can pick them when they're absolutely ripe. They're warm off the vine and they're absolutely gorgeous, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah, lovely.
So we got some, now that looks like sage to me.
Yeah, so we have sage, we have lemon balm here, which smells absolutely delicious. We have chives here, which are actually really good for the bees because of the flowers on top. We have marjoram over here and thyme. So, oh, there's a bee there actually. Yeah,
it's a bumblebee. It's one of the ginger ones. And that's the common carder bee. It's got quite a lot of back in the back. It's quite gingery overall. There's another one in the country now called tree bumblebee.
Oh yeah.
Which has got ginger on the middle bit and then a white tail. And that's unique. in bumblebees in Britain. But there's a couple of species which are quite similar to this one.
Okay.
But the tree bumblebee nest in holes, but quite often they'll sometimes take over a bird box.
Oh, really?
And they're quite often in trees, hence tree bumblebee.
Yeah. Oh,
There's
wow.
the common carder bee. They're called carders because they live, I don't know if you know there's any nests around here, but they live in the sort of slightly longer grass.
Okay.
And the nest is on the surface, and they drag bits of dry grass and things like that over the top of their nest.
Oh, right. I'd like
So
to see
carding is like, it's a term used in preparing wool to scrape the fibres straight. So that's what they do. They scrape
okay.
the fibres of the grass over the
Yeah.
top of the nest.
Oh, wow.
So sometimes if you've got a bit of long grass, don't mow it if you can help it until the bees nest. But you probably find you mow it and you've mown through a bumblebee nest, and they won't be that happy.
And when would that be?
I mean, if you can leave it right to the end of the year, because
Okay.
what happens with bumblebees is that a nest last year will produce males and new queens, and then that nest entirely dies away, and then they do a mating flight, and then the ones that overwinter are the newly mated queens. So they go and hibernate somewhere. So all the rest of the bumblebees die off
Okay.
normally. I mean, you sometimes get, if it's a really mild winter, you might get some hangover to the next year, but normally it's only the new queens which hibernate. They'll come out, found a nest, lay the first few eggs, and get those to be workers, and then those workers take over all the work. And she come out occasionally, but she mainly stays in the nest because, she's the important one laying the eggs.
Okay. Yeah.
So all those workers will be female,
Right.
and they do produce males a bit later in the year for the mating flights, but their sole job is to mate with the new queens, and that's it. So they're pretty useless otherwise. They don't do any work.
Because we have got tawny mining bees at home, and I've often wondered, because I do want to pull some plants up from around there just because I want to replant some, and I just don't want to disturb them. So so it's good to know when I can actually do that.
Yeah, it's different because the mining bees, as you might expect, make little tunnels in the soil.
Yeah.
And quite often, I mean, they can be up to 1/2 metre deep.
Oh, really?
So if you do a bit of work on the surface,
Okay.
they're probably
Might
fine.
be okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah. And the other thing, actually, because we're talking about male and female bees and wasps, only the females can sting.
Okay.
Because it's the egg-laying tube that's been modified as a sting. So you pick up, as long as you can recognise a male, you can pick up a male, no trouble, because it won't sting you.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I'm there yet, so I don't think I'll try.
So there's some lovely plants here. I think it's a lot of these herbs. What's the whitish one there?
That's a curry plant.
Oh, right.
So I'm not actually too sure what you'd use it for, but if you just give it a sniff.
Yeah, it smells of curry,
Yeah,
doesn't it? Yeah, of
definitely.
course. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, it's got lovely little compact yellow flowers that are open.
Yeah.
Um,
I do find that herbs are great for planting for pollinators. I find a lot of the bees do enjoy a good herb.
oh, they do. The herbs are fantastic for pollinators. I mean, this lemon balm, it's got these little sort of short tube flowers, but they've got like a tube which the bumblebees quite like, but that's quite an open flower. And they have relatively simple flowers. They haven't been modified by people too much. So you do find that herbs are very good for pollinating insects as well. Because the sage, there's a whole big family of garden plants. I mean, this is a sort of culinary
Yes.
sage, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
But you get loads of different sages, normally blues and red flowers
Okay.
as garden plants for the flowers. But they're all pretty equally good.
Yeah, I've got some pineapple sage and some blackcurrant sage at home actually, which smell absolutely delicious. But I'm waiting for them to really get going and really start flowering.
And mints are very good as well.
Yes.
Yeah, because you can use them as cooking and stuff like that. And there's a whole variety of those. But the mint flowers are great for pollinating insects as well.
And you've got the mint moth as well, haven't you?
Yeah, and that's the thing. You've got a huge amount of, particularly moths. We talked last time about butterflies and moths, and essentially butterflies are posh moths. There's far more. There's thousands of moths in the country, but you just don't see them because they're mostly out at night. There's a few day-flying ones.
Yeah.
And they'll each have their own. Some lay their eggs on a wide variety of plants, and some lay their eggs on just one plant.
Yeah, because it doesn't is it the elephant hawk moth that lays the eggs on the fuchsia plant, I believe.
Yes, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because you've got a range of trees here as well.
Mm-hmm.
What have we got? We're outside the garden a little bit, but these actually, because the thing here is it used to be not quite a stately home. It was
Nearly though.
nearly, because it was called Solon Court Cottage, but it was an aristocratic cottage,
Yes.
which was much bigger than most of our houses.
Yes, yeah.
So that when it became derelict, Hampshire County Council bought the site. The house isn't here anymore, but the garden is, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. So the garden is very much where the garden is now. Then also they did have a bog garden, which we think went down further on, just about where the classroom is. So their garden definitely was very much bigger, and they also had a gardener on site that lived in a little kind of what I'd describe as probably a tin hut, but it looks very cosy.
Yeah, yeah. And you've actually still got traces of it here, haven't you? There's a little brick stepway. It's quite romantic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
You
lovely.
go down to where your boardwalk goes through the wet woodland down the bottom.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's a lot of plants here. I've seen laburnum, and there's a lot of buddleia, which is always a good plant.
There is a lot, yes.
For butterflies in particular.
Yeah, yeah.
And actually, yesterday I saw a painted lady on one of my garden. So yeah, we've got a bumblebee on the nasturtium there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a white-tailed bumblebee. There's a lot of white-tailed bumblebees. There's still some discussion about how many different species there are. But these ones, they nest in the ground.
Oh right, okay.
So they'll quite often take over a mouse burrow. And they're attracted, sometimes they think they're attracted to the smell of mouse pee.
Oh really?
So they know where the hole is. But they're some of the biggest. So your common carder bee, the full nest would maybe have 30 to 50 workers in.
Oh.
These, at a big nest, could have 400 workers in. These
Oh, really?
white-tailed bumblebees.
And that would be underground?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
right.
wow. Okay.
Actually, that one was cheating a little bit because this one's going in the front of the flower.
Yeah.
I think the other one, it was going between the leaves around the back of the flower.
Ah.
And sometimes you get them that bite little holes because they haven't got enough tongue to go in. They bite a little hole at the end.
Yeah,
And
I've heard that recently.
Yeah, they bypass the pollen,
Yeah.
which isn't the game we should be playing.
So it's just taking the nectar rather than taking the pollen with it, is that right? Or
This will be trying to take the pollen as well,
okay.
but it's the nectar which draws them in.
Yeah, yeah.
So although they use the pollen, you can see it's got little pollen baskets on its back legs. You can see a
Yep.
little splodgy orange there.
Yeah. Oh yes.
So that's
Yeah.
where they collect their pollen.
Yeah.
But basically, the plants are using the nectar to draw them in because they want to transport the pollen around.
Yeah.
So it's like they're working together basically. But nectar's the pay for them, but they will use the pollen as well, because particularly solitary bees, what they do is they make what they call a pollen loaf. So they make the cell where they burrow down to the ground or in the wood or whatever. They'll make the cell and they'll make a pollen loaf out of nectar and pollen together, like a lump,
Oh,
and lay that egg on it and then
Yeah.
seal it off.
so it's
So that's
food.
that's that one
Yeah.
cell for that one larvae to eat. And they do like the beans as well, don't they?
Yeah, they do. The nice red, bright red flowers on there.
But also I like the fact you've laid what we, some people call weeds in here. You've got the
Yes, we've left them.
it's forget-me-nots, a bit of groundsel, and there's spurge there somewhere I saw.
Is that dock over there?
Yeah, it's a little bit
Yeah.
of dock. Some can take over a bit, but it doesn't matter with a plant like this. You're not competing with
No.
your pumpkins in this case,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
courgettes.
Yeah.
So it can be good to. A weed is just what they call a plant in the wrong place. So it's
Yes.
good to, because they're good
Yeah.
nectar sources and good for a lot of insects.
Yeah. No, definitely.
So we talked about mint. There's some lovely mint here. I don't know which one this is. Difficult to tell, isn't it? It could be spearmint.
Yeah, I think it's spearmint. I think, but we have got lemon balm in between there as well. And I think this is it feverfew?
Feverfew.
Feverfew.
Yes.
We had, I was amazed actually the other day, we had a rose chafer beetle on it, which I hadn't seen.
They're a big green thing, aren't they? Yeah.
They're absolutely glorious to look at, and they was just crawling on the top.
And some of these names, clearly we've got feverfew, and we talked about lungwort, and I think that big yellow plant may be leopard's bane.
Okay.
that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And quite often anything that's got wort in it tends to be a medicinal plant.
Ah, like St John's.
St John's wort, yeah, that's still used medicinally, isn't it? And it was thought at one point that there was a thing called the doctrine of signatures, where they thought if it looks like something, looks like an ear,
Yeah.
or looks like a, because that patchy leaves, something on the lungwort,
Yeah.
looks like a lung apparently.
Yeah.
I've not got a
heard
lung
that.
out to have a look. But yeah, if it looked like the thing, you could treat it
Oh my.
with that. And that, you know,
That's a dangerous
it's a dangerous
way
thing
to
to do, yeah.
medicate.
But I mean, clearly, I mean, through medieval times, you didn't have much in the way of chemical
Yeah.
treatments, and some things. I mean, it's like because there was some foxglove over there. They still use that. That's digitalis. I think they still
really?
use it for the treatment of heart disease.
Really?
You get salicylic acid, which is aspirin, and that's willow bark.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
I
so
didn't
I
know
mean, they
that.
probably chemically synthesise it now rather than get it from the bark. But people used to chew a bit of willow bark. And feverfew,
Yeah.
I'd imagine,
Ah.
basically reduces fevers.
Because it looks a little bit like chamomile in a way, doesn't it?
It's that
Doesn't
same
it? In a
family,
way.
yeah. It's like a slightly bigger daisy flower, isn't it?
Yeah.
And again, what you've got is a composite flower. Actually, that one flower is a mass of flowers packed together.
Oh really?
So you've got all the pollen-bearing bits in the middle,
Yeah.
and then you've got these long petals around the edge. They're a typical daisy flower, like you see with a sunflower or a daisy. There's some really nice ones there.
Oh yeah, they're new ones.
And again, there's a fly on that one down there because they can get. You can see its little short tongue coming out.
Yeah. Yeah.
They get easy access to the pollen. What's this? Is it a junk pile? Here you've got it. What's this?
It's not quite a junk pile. It's almost like a log pile, you call it, or bark. It's basically dead trees.
And that's the thing. I mean, the Victorians used to have stumperies
Yeah.
where you'd have these with ferns in amongst them, and it's typically the way they. I mean, it's probably a bit more picturesque. And I'm not saying your pile isn't lovely and picturesque, but it's really good because you can see there's masses of holes in it, isn't there?
Yeah. I have actually once seen a woodpecker come down and peck around on here and getting all the bugs and the beetles out.
Yeah, because that looks like a woodpecker
Worms.
hole there.
Yeah.
But mainly there's be beetles burrowing into this.
Yeah.
And some beetles like dry dead wood to burrow into. Some just go under the bark, and sometimes I won't take all it off, but sometimes you can peel the bark back, and you'll find like a gallery of tunnels where there's smaller beetles going underneath the bark.
Oh, okay.
So the beetles will be in here, and it's the larvae the beetles are after. You get the white grubs,
Yeah.
and they'll be burrowing through and eating all the wood, and they might be in there for a couple of years before
Oh,
they come
wow.
out as an adult beetle.
Because how long do stag beetles stay in wood for? That's a long time, isn't it?
It can be a couple of years. I mean, they like big rotting tree stumps. We also got this thing like a little house over here. What's this thing?
Yeah, so we have a bug hotel. We do have residents currently here. So I think I've seen the leaf cutter bee. I think I've seen 2 burrows with the green sort of like mush inside. And then also a type of masonry bee as well, because it's also almost a bit like cement, if you will.
Yeah.
In these little holes and the little tubes. I've also seen some type of parasitic wasp.
Yeah.
They're like blue and red colour. They're stunning to look at. But the fact that they're called wasps puts me off a little bit.
I know. I mean, I'd say wasps get a bad press, I think, but that's probably one of the ruby-tailed wasps. There's a little group of those in Britain,
Oh.
and there'll be parasites on the bees. Parasites isn't quite right because a parasite doesn't really. It shouldn't affect what it's sitting on too much. It should be pretty minimal. So if you think of a tapeworm, I'm not suggesting you've got a tapeworm, but it should be sitting in there and not actually damaging the host very much, but they just sit alongside them
Oh,
and
okay.
eat a bit of their food.
Okay.
But basically, these they're sometimes called kleptoparasites because they steal, like a kleptomaniac.
Okay.
So they'll lay their egg inside the nest of the bee, and then that will hatch out. It'll either destroy the egg of the bee or eat the larvae. And and then eat the contents of the nest.
Right.
But they're beautiful. They're stunning
Yeah.
rainbow colours.
Yeah, they are. They're really, really beautiful. I was hoping it was going to be a nice beetle. But I shouldn't think badly of wasps.
People should be nicer to wasps.
Yeah,
They're lovely
they
things.
should.
They do a lot of good in the garden. But
Yeah.
you've got quite a big setup here. It's about
Yes.
well, a metre and a half square, like a big cube with a roof on it and bug hotel on the front.
Yeah, it's got bricks in there, it's got bamboo, it's got drilled bits of wood, other tiles, things like that. But you can easily make one of these actually out of something that you can recycle.
Yeah.
So you can use an old plastic bottle,
Yeah.
cut both sides off, and then just stuff that with bamboo, with sticks, with anything that's maybe decaying, so it can attract the beetles.
Yeah.
And just stuff it and maybe just place it in the garden or hang it on the bush. Make sure it's not kind of hanging so the wind will take it, so it's quite stationary. And I think you'd actually see quite a bit.
Yeah. And there's a little tiny wasp actually. Oh, down the far bottom corner on the left down there. I think it's just disappeared.
I was going to say you've got good eyes.
It's gone in amongst the cracks and crevices, and that's what they love doing. And I think the way it was fidgeting, it's probably one of a group one called spider hunting wasps,
Oh wow.
because they will catch and stock their nest with spiders,
Oh
which
wow.
is quite amazing. Because it was, it's only about half a centimetre long, that particular one, but it's equivalent, I think, of having a predator that eats tigers.
Yeah.
Because a spider's a major
Yeah.
predator, and you've got to subdue it, and you've got to take it back to your nest
Yeah.
and lay an egg on it.
It's quite risky business.
It's quite risky, yeah. And the sting doesn't kill the prey. It's the
Oh,
same with
okay.
the solitary wasps as well. They eat caterpillars and all the rest. It sounds a bit gruesome.
Do they sort of stun it in
They
a way?
stun it.
Oh, okay.
And that keeps the meat fresh, shall we say.
Oh.
So, until it's eaten, of course.
Oh.
And there's actually one of these spider hunting wasps that lives in sand dunes. And clearly the sand isn't a particularly stable place to put a nest. I mean, you're not burrowing into clay or soil.
Yeah.
You can imagine that tunnel style's quite good. But,
Yeah.
but what it does is it stuns the spider, puts it in the cell it's made, lays the egg on it, and then seals it over. And quite often the spider will wake up
Oh.
and crawl round and round inside the cell, laying down silk,
Yeah.
and basically improving its own dungeon
Wow.
and stabilises it.
That's both gruesome and very clever.
It is very clever, isn't it? Yeah.
And what's really quite funny from around the corner here, so as you can see, all the bamboo has seemingly fallen out or maybe been picked out. We thought it might have been people taking the bamboo out and just dropping it, but actually it was birds.
Yeah.
So it's sort of created its own ecosystem in a way, because the birds are actually using the bug hotel to obviously find their lunch.
Well, absolutely, yeah. Because what things are doing, they're going into nests. Some of them, like the bees and wasps, and some of the beetles. Other things will be going in there. There's a little black wasp going in
Yeah, I
there.
just saw that.
Yeah, sometimes they're using it to hibernate in there.
Oh, okay.
So if you've got a lot of hibernating insects, and that could include moths and butterflies, that's a tasty treat for a big wintering bird, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, you've got a mass of different bamboos here, all different sizes. Different sizes
Yes.
is the key, isn't it?
Yeah. Different sizes, different lengths even as well. And different widths.
Yep, because you've got different species in different ones.
Yeah.
Some of the really tiny bits of cane, because some of these little solitary black wasps, they nest in woodworm burrows, so you can see how small they
Oh
are.
wow, that is small. Yeah.
And I say they stock their nests with greenflies and things like that, which are, ladybirds and lacewings get all the good press.
Yes.
I think there's something to be said for wasps.
Yeah.
So you've got this one
Yeah.
with a bit of sun on it, which the bees and wasps like, but if you put it in a bit more shade, you might get more beetles in there.
Ah, right. Okay, that's good to know.
But it's in partial shade, which is probably about right.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got a pond.
Yes. So we've got two ponds actually in this in the Century Garden. This I don't actually know what this plant is, but we have seen ram's horn snails on top of the leaves, especially when it's been quite sunny. And there's also every now and again we find some snail shells that have been discarded on here, so birds are definitely using to find their food.
Yeah. It's one of the best things you can do in a garden.
Yeah, Yeah,
'Cause you get
absolutely.
birds and things drinking from it. There's pond skaters there. There's one here, look.
Oh yeah.
It looks like, I mean, you know insects have got 6 legs,
Yeah.
but the 2 front legs are quite small.
Oh yeah. Look like
So
they've
you've got
four,
these
don't
cross-shaped of
they? Oh,
the
yeah.
2 long legs, and you can see they're sitting on the surface of the water. It's quite amazing. There's a snail there, look.
Oh yeah, there it is.
The range of different wildlife you get in here is fantastic, you know, because clearly, if you didn't have ponds, you wouldn't have pond snails and you wouldn't have pond skaters
No.
or water boatmen. You get dragonflies around here?
Yep, we've got dragonflies, especially in the other pond.
Yeah.
We've even seen the dragonfly nymph cases as well, that you see in, was it June time, when they come up,
Yeah.
and they use the bulrushes or any type of long grass to kind of emerge from the water, and then they kind of break away from the shell, but the shell remains, and it's
Yeah.
a perfect resemblance of the actual nymph what it used to be. It's
Yeah.
amazing. It's
Yeah.
absolutely incredible.
So, and there's a lovely stump.
Yes, I love this actually, just to, especially in autumn time, it's absolutely full of fungi.
Yeah.
It's great.
And it's a whole mass of moss as well as bits of lichen.
Yeah,
And this is the sort of thing Victorians loved in their, you know, as a
Oh,
stumpery.
really?
I mean, this is an entire tree basically.
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
This is the root.
pretty
end.
much.
But you can see it's still got loads of beetle burrows in it.
Yeah, and you can see little holes.
And this is pretty much just down to the heartwood. Just this, you know, all the bark's gone off the outside,
Yeah.
but it's still a lovely garden feature, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
With plants on it.
It's all the moss, and it's it's green as well as being the tree trunk.
Yeah. And this is a bit less wildlife garden. This bit more formal. This bit,
Yeah, a
isn't
bit more of a cottage garden.
Yeah.
What we call it.
it? And cottage garden plants again can be very good.
Yeah,
You know, they're good pollinator plants.
yeah.
So what's this one?
I'm not sure what this one is.
I think is it penstemon?
Oh, okay. It's a lovely pink, reddy colour.
Yeah.
You can see it being there already. Oh, 2.
Yeah, there's the 2 of the gingery ones again, those common carder bees. Yeah, it's 2 hoverflies here.
Oh yeah, I can see them there.
And again, we all probably know that hoverflies, they mimic wasps, so they
Yeah.
quite often strike, but they can't sting. They're
Yeah.
totally harmless.
Yeah.
There's a whole range of these things, which there's some of, it's not all hoverfly larvae,
No.
but quite a few of them eat aphids again.
Oh, okay.
Um,
That's good to know. I've
So-
got quite a few different ones at home. We've had the bee mimic hoverfly,
yeah,
which has been absolutely, it's amazing to watch because it looks just like a bee, but you just know that there's something about it that isn't quite bee.
well that's it, yeah,
So
yeah,
it's quite funny, really.
yeah.
And the other day I did see the, I don't know if the sunflies are related to the hoverflies, I think.
Yeah, they've got a sort of family group. Oh, you've
Yeah.
got soldier flies, which are disrelated,
okay.
but they do look quite the same.
Okay.
They're colourful and greens and blues and things like that.
Yeah. Because I saw the hairy sunfly the other week, which
Yeah.
I've never seen before, but it was like bright yellow with a little like hair at the side.
Yeah.
It was really cool to look.
And there's some really quite exotic things in here, isn't there? We've got the gunneras, some of the things, giant rhubarb.
Yeah.
Not much use for pollinators, I don't think. I'm not sure it does much, but
I suppose it's good shelter or shade, maybe. I'm not
yeah,
sure.
I mean, it can get away. I mean, you wouldn't want to put it in a wildlife garden
Yeah.
because it can totally take over and it can
Yeah.
actually escape into the wild.
Okay.
I mean, when I say escape, it's not going to run off,
yeah.
but the seeds get out. And there is a bit of a problem sometimes with some plants. I mean, the classics are things like Himalayan balsam and Japanese
Oh, yeah.
knotweed, which have got out into the wild, and
Yeah.
because there's nothing native that eats it.
Yeah.
Then you know they go rampant, and
Yeah.
you've got to control them.
Mm.
But this is a relative at least of a native one. There's a mullein,
Okay.
and there's again lovely spikes of yellow flowers.
Yeah, and I love the furry leaves as well.
Yeah, and I mean that sensory thing as well is
Mm.
quite important. But there is also a type of bee, because we talked about the mason wasps using mud to make their nests,
Yeah.
and the leaf cutters using sections of leaf, quite often rose leaf. There's a solitary bee which uses the fibres scraped off this type of leaf
Oh wow.
to make their nest, and then they almost make it like felt.
Oh wow. Bit cosy then.
Yeah, yeah. It's called Anthidium manicatum.
Oh,
I don't
that's a
know.
fancy name.
Yeah, I don't know. Wall carder bee, I think, is one
Ah.
name for it. And it's quite a big bee, and actually, particularly, I don't think you've got any lambs here. There's a plant called
No.
lambs here, stachys, which has got very, very fluffy leaves. And the males of the bee will stand guard over one plant because they know the females are going to come there.
Okay.
So if they can make their exclusive rights to this plant, they
Yeah.
can make the females that come there. And they've got they're quite a robust bee. They look like a little smallish bumblebee size,
Okay.
but they've got spikes underneath their abdomen, and they've known to fight to the death,
Wow.
the males,
Wow.
to take control of this plant and to crush them with these spikes. But it's fascinating, isn't it?
Very.
Now, do you have any hedgehogs here?
We don't, unfortunately. Not that we've seen any anyway. But a garden is a really, really good place for a hedgehog to even, maybe not even just live in, but can visit each night.
I think because I live in quite a rural place, I'm surrounded by fields. I've never seen a hedgehog in my garden, but I think it's because I don't do quite so well in farmland.
Yes.
Um,
I think they've definitely moved, a bit like your foxes almost. They've moved kind of a bit more in urban areas.
Yeah, it's where they can still survive is the thing, really.
Yeah.
They haven't chosen to move there, but it's one of the few places they can still thrive.
Yeah.
Because, you've got little wild bits, you've got, people don't tend to use much of our chemicals here. There's problems sometimes because they eat slugs and snails. And if you've used slug pellets, there's the chance that poison will sit in the slug and get eaten by the hedgehog.
That does happen.
But gardens can be very good and probably better than most other habitats. For hedgehogs.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why it's really important that we open the gardens up. So even just creating a little hole can create a hedgehog highway. And if you do that with a few neighbours, you're enabling the space that the hedgehog will go into, that you're almost doubling it.
Yeah.
Because they travel quite far each night. They travel about 2 miles.
And they just need, I always thought, the size of your fist. If you can put a hole at the base of your fence,
Yeah.
the size of your fist,
Yeah.
hedgehog gets through.
Yeah,
there. So it doesn't
absolutely.
need, it doesn't necessarily let dogs get through and all
No.
the rest of it. So.
No.
And clearly you can go as far as putting hedgehog homes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it might well be they're in the bottom of your stumpery over there.
Yeah, that's true.
So it has brightened up a little bit, hasn't it? I think we've got a
it
few more
has.
butterflies around. I just saw a small skipper.
Oh, I think I just saw it. Is that a cabbage white?
Yeah, large white.
Large white.
They all lay their eggs on. They're probably looking for your cabbages. They're probably going to lay on your nasturtiums there, I think, again. Yeah, but cabbage white is a good, a general name for about 3 species.
Oh, okay.
But you got the little. It's down on that chamomile down. Is that chamomile?
I think it's dog fennel. I think.
Dog fennel.
Yeah.
Never heard of that one.
Really?
No.
Yeah, because I thought that was fennel, and then I did a bit of research, and there's something called dog fennel. It's called something else as well. It might just be like a kind of.
You get a lot of local
name.
names for things.
Yeah.
And I love the local names. Well, we've got a really amazing looking caterpillar on this hydrangea here. Can you see it there? Look.
Oh yeah, oh, that's cool. And what's that? That
think-
doesn't look like a caterpillar in a way, does it?
No, it's a massive long hairs. It's got an orange tuft at the back. Look.
Oh yeah.
And then these. It looks like little yellow shaving brushes
Yeah.
on the front.
Yeah.
Often wonder, do people still know what shaving brushes are? Who uses shaving brush these days? But you know what I mean. And I think it's a pale tussock moth.
Oh, okay.
It does look like a pale tussock. It's a very small one. But sometimes you find the moths. We talked about moths before. That they've got some lovely names, but sometimes the name's more related to what the caterpillar looks like.
Oh right, yeah, I got you.
So the elephant hawk moth is pinks and greys, but doesn't really look much like an elephant. But
No.
the caterpillar looks like an elephant's trunk. There's a moth called the lobster moth.
Oh right, and I take it that looks like a lobster.
The moth doesn't. It doesn't actually look much like a lobster, but the caterpillar's got these weird. Most caterpillars got little short legs, haven't they?
Yeah.
This has got really weird long front legs.
Oh wow.
And it curls its body up into funny shapes.
And
I
where
thi-
would you find them?
I think they're on oak trees. So probably,
Have a
they'll be
look.
up there, so you
Yeah.
wouldn't necessarily see them too often.
Okay.
But it's just disappearing into the hydrangea. I don't think it eats hydrangea.
And what would this look like as a moth?
It's a greyish moth.
Okay.
Quite nice pattern, but again, you wouldn't necessarily think pale tussock from the moth.
Yeah.
But clearly that's got pale tussocks on its
Okay.
back.
Right. Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
So clearly, it's It's not massive, but it's quite a size here, and you've got quite a lot of things going on here. Can most people reproduce this in their own gardens, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of the pollinator patch, I was just buying plugs, and they are actually quite cheap. An even cheaper way you could do it is by buying the seeds and growing from seed and starting it off in your house, or if you've got a greenhouse somewhere warm. That's a really, really good way. Or you could even start off with someone else and you could plant swap, which is a really good way.
Yeah, and actually, if you go to the garden centres at the time when the flower's gone over,
Yeah.
you know, it's a really cheap way because they'll often discount those.
Yeah, I love going around to the reduced section of a garden
Section.
centre.
Yeah, as long as you're willing to wait until next year till the flowers come.
Yeah.
But also, you might, you know, you can find those pots you can split up, so you can get more than one plant out of each pot.
Yeah.
So that's another cheap way of doing it, isn't it?
Yeah.
What about the bug hotels?
So bug hotels are really easy. They're basically things you can find off the ground, and if you kind of cobble them together, put them together in, maybe if you've got some twine, or as we talked about before, the plastic bottle, if you don't want to use plastic, maybe you can, maybe if you've even got any little bits of old furniture that you could put together, you could easily make a bug hotel with that.
Yeah, I've even just taken, I mean, some of your rose cuttings and stuff like that. This thing will burrow in the pith in the middle of the stems.
Ah, right.
So if you use old rose cuttings, or even, you know, your bits of bamboo cane cut up into lengths and just tied together and hung on a wall,
Yeah.
they can work like that.
Yeah.
And I think our YouTube channel, there's tutorials on there.
Oh, right, okay.
And we'll also have information about the different plants which are good for different bees and wasps and pollinators.
Yeah, it's really good to know.
And water, I mean, you might not have enough room for a pond. That's quite a big pond you've got there, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But if you don't have enough room, what I'm going to do at home is just kind of buy one of those sort of like a metal bath type container, and then fill that with water and just see what happens. Get a few pond plants, and then just, hopefully let nature come.
Absolutely, you can just have a saucer. I mean, it will dry out quite quickly, but birds and, I mean, even bees, when it's a really hot, dry summer, bees in particular drink a lot. Yeah. So even that can bring them in. But you need somewhere shallow so they can get into the edge and they don't fall into the deep water and drown.
Okay.
Otherwise it's just a big trap.
Yeah, I've started to put, like one of those, the water collectors when you get at the bottom of a plant pot, and then put pebbles in it and then let the rain collect in that, and then that acts as a sort of shallow water, like drinking station for bugs and bees.
It's everything you can do can be useful to wildlife.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Jane. It's been really great looking. You've got a lovely resource here, and it's good to know what other people can do in their own gardens. So it's really been nice to come and look at your garden.
Yeah, no, it's been great to show you around.
So what about your garden, Carly?
So my garden is very wild. I do live in the middle of Southampton, but I've let all the bushes grow, I let the grass grow. I tend to go home and empty out my socks from when I've been out walking, and I get all sorts of plants growing in my garden. But I've also got hedgehogs, and I've got loads and loads of stag beetles.
Yeah, and we were saying earlier that, you know, my garden, I've never seen a hedgehog in my garden, I've never seen a stag beetle. So sometimes these urban gardens have some species that more rural ones don't.
So one of the things I'm aiming to do this year is to identify all the bees that visit my garden. Because now I've been working at home, I drink my coffee, sat out in the garden in the morning, and I get to see all the wonderful bees that visit the flowers. And I never realised how many different types of bee I get in my garden.
Yeah, I'm forever getting sent by you, you know, strange little pictures that are pretty unidentified. What's this, Andy? What's that, Andy?
Well, I've got to ask someone, Andy, and you are the expert, as you say.
So we're standing right next to a really good plant for gardens, for butterflies, and it's a buddleia. Some people know it's butterfly bush, but it's got these lovely long pink flowers on it at the moment, isn't it?
They're purple, Andy.
Well, purple, yeah, okay.
You can get all different colours, can't you? You can get pink ones, purple ones, you can get really, really dark ones, and you can even get white buddleias as well.
Yeah, but I think the bog standard common, this sort of light purple, I'll call it, is probably the best one. I think some of the other darker flowers and the white ones don't get the same numbers of butterflies on.
No.
We can see a few here, can't we?
We can see lots here. So I've been sat here for a little while and I've seen lots of red admirals, commas.
Yeah.
There's a few whites. There's not been many whites around today.
And I had a painted lady butterfly, my neighbour's buddleia yesterday.
And I love painted ladies because they are really cool.
Yeah, they're migrants. They fly across. They come up from North Africa, and they lay eggs and produce new broods. Then move further north, all through the spring and into the summer. and sometimes in huge numbers. I remember driving along between Winchester and where I live, 272, which is a sort of east-west road, and there was just streams of butterflies going across the top. I must have counted 30 or 40.
I do like, red admirals are my favourite butterfly. It's the first butterfly I ever learnt to identify.
And they're another one of the ones that really like nettles, because they lay their eggs on nettles.
Yeah, and this year in my garden, I've left a patch of nettles. I leave a patch of nettles every year, but this is the first year I've ever had red admirals lay eggs on them. So I'm really excited, and I'm not letting my husband chop them down.
So a little bit of creative untidiness is fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, untidy gardens are the best.
Yeah.
So are you ready for another of Carly's fun facts, Sandy?
I'm always ready for your fun facts, Carly.
Okay, so we love our gardens, but did you know the estimated total area of gardens in the UK is about 433,000 hectares? And that's 4.5 times larger than all of our national nature reserves put together.
Well, you think that's a huge resource for nature, isn't it? So if you can manage it for nature, it's really significant nationally.
So much of our gardens are being lost, although many people now are into wildlife gardening and leaving their gardens a little bit more messy. There's a lot of lawns being turned into astroturf, trees and shrubs being cut back, and lots of nice lawns being replaced by patios and decking.
And I can understand that, you want a nice place to be, but if you can leave a little part of your garden at least to nature. I think Bug Life had this thing of having a metre square. If you times that by a number of gardens in Britain, if you've got that many metres squared, at least let go wild, or maybe have your patch of nettles or your bit of water or your pond. I mean, I'm probably extreme in terms of how much I leave it go wild. And it's not laziness, clearly.
I hope you have all enjoyed this episode of Looking After Nature. We'd love to hear from you with any comments or thoughts, or if there's anything you'd like us to discuss in a future episode, please let us know by checking out our social media pages.
And we'd really appreciate if you rate and review our podcast on iTunes, as this helps other people find us. For now, thanks again for listening. I'm Andy Davidson.
And I'm Carly Howard. See you next time.